see. Claire, make a post. All right, as you're joining, remember to sign in on the call document. The link's on the screen. It's also in the email that you probably clicked on to join the call.
So was that to me?
No, just to everyone.
Okay.
Just a reminder to everyone. Just looking to see. All right, I don't see Amy work yet. Are you on the call that I don't see? Just checking for all our panelists.
And I just forwarded Amy the invite. I think she might have had the old Zoom link.
Okay.
She should be joining us momentarily.
I
Okay.
do, and I was actually in the other room, and there were, I think, 5 other people in another Zoom link as well. And I found that one on a website, so I don't know.
Okay.
I can share the link that I was just on.
Okay, I will join that room and see if I can corral those
Okay.
people, bring them over here.
Okay, thanks, Matthew.
Here's the, so Matthew, I'll just send it directly to you then, so as to not confuse everyone. Matthew Rich, correct?
It. Yes, Matthew
Okay.
Rich.
Yeah, thanks.
There you are.
All
Hey,
right.
Stephanie. Nice to see you here.
Okay, I think we got all our panelists. Thank you everybody for joining, and everyone else as well. Go ahead and get started, and maybe we'll have some more people join from the exiled Zoom group if they figure out how to make their way over here. Hi, I'm Christina Maimon. I am a coordinator for the data-facing track. So some of you have seen me before, and some of you probably haven't. I work at Northwestern in the Research Computing Services group there. Thanks to the Emerging Centers track for letting us crash their normal time, and Systems Facing track for joining us. And I think we probably have Researcher Facing track folks here as well. So quick notes as we're getting started. As always, sign in on the call document. It is up on the screen at the moment, the bit.ly link, and it's also in the email. For those who normally are on the data-facing track calls, we don't usually record the call, but we're recording this one. The other tracks usually do, so just be aware that that is theoretically happening. I think somebody's taking care of that. And then a few announcements. Matthew Rich, who we were just talking about, my co-coordinator on the data-facing track, is going to rotate off of the track leadership. He took a new position recently that isn't research related, so we are looking for a new coordinator for the track. So if you're interested in that, please email me or Matthew, and we can get you more details about what that involves. Mostly it's helping organize these monthly calls, finding topics, speakers, and figuring out anything else that we want to do with the track and the network. The June data-facing call is canceled. It would be in sort of 2 weeks since we have this weird time zone. We're gonna, or this weird time this month, we're going to push off until our July call, which if you are interested in presenting at the July call, please let us know. Maybe you've got you know, something for an upcoming conference you want to share, a project you want to share. Otherwise, we will let you know what that topic is going to be as soon as we have that sorted out. And then a reminder that PERC is virtual this year, and that includes the student program. And we have 2 of the folks who are organizing the student program on our panel today, so they will tell you a little bit more about that. But since this is a call about working with students, getting your students involved in the PERC student program is a good opportunity. Any other announcements from track coordinators or anybody else before we get going on today's topic? All right, I don't hear any, so you can make them later. All right, for today's call, reason we're all here, we've got a great panel of folks who work with students and have volunteered to share their experiences with us. Each of them is going to introduce themselves, and then we'll turn to some of the questions. If you've got a question, again, put it in the call document. There's a section with questions, and we'll work through those. That's the primary place I'm going to look for questions to ask the panel. If you've got like clarification questions or sort of follow-ups, you can try and stick those in the chat, and we'll try and pay attention to those. But if you've got new questions, definitely stick them in the call document. All right, so we're going to go in order that folks were listed. So Amy, we are starting with you.
Hey, good morning. My name is Amy Neeser, and I work at the University of California, Berkeley. I work in the research IT department. My background is actually as a data librarian, but I manage the consulting and the outreach efforts in research IT. So we work a lot with students. We're a really small team, and students are the way that we're able to extend our reach, actually, and serve all of campus. So right now we have 4 students who are working with our HPC team. They're doing stuff in the data center, answering kind of first tier help tickets. I have 2 students, undergrads also, who are working with me on communication and outreach efforts, designing things, helping with social media, helping out at digital events, which has been kind of fun. I also work with 2 undergrads who are data peer consultants. And so those are undergrads consulting with other undergrads about data science topics, which is very interesting. That's a new effort for us. And then I also work with graduate students. So right now I have 4 on my team, and they are domain consultants. So they're PhD students who are situated in a domain. So they bring that domain expertise to our group, and then we train them on things like high performance computing and cloud and virtual machines and all the fun things, which they can then bring back to their domain and their department. So it's this kind of reciprocal relationship. So I love working with students, and I would say the one thing that I want to share is that peer-based learning is really an amazing opportunity. And I would encourage you all to think about that. Like I said, we're starting this Data Peers program. We're contributing to it in Research IT, but other campus partners are as well. So the library is involved, our social sciences D-Lab, our Division of Computing, Data Science, and Society. We're all kind of contributing these undergrad data peers to be a group to consult with other undergrads. Thank you.
Thanks. Tony, you're up next.
Okay, thank you. I hope you can hear me. I'm not sharing video because I'm having some internet issues this morning. We've had a lot of rain here in Kentucky. I'm the Associate Director for the Center for Computational Sciences at the University of Kentucky. Our center normally has anywhere between 1 and 4 students a semester. It will depend upon the particular needs. We normally wind up hiring mostly undergrads, but occasionally we'll have a graduate student as well. This particular semester, we had 3 undergraduates and 1 graduate student that was working with us. During the semester, of course, we always restrict the number of hours, and we always talk to the students about seriously prioritizing their work so that it does not interfere, of course, with their classwork. This particular semester, the student assignments will vary from job to job. This year we had 1 student working in web development. We had 2 students that were working in networking and system administration support. And we had 1 student that was assigned to work with a particular research project. Our center does a lot of support for faculty in research computing, working on algorithms and data analytics and things of that nature. And we normally try to involve students in those kinds of projects as well. So it really varies every semester as to what we're doing with the students and how many there are. The one comment I would have as far as lessons learned for me is communications is key and so important for working with the students. We really, emphasize an open door policy, and we discuss seriously with the students for them to not hesitate to ask us questions and come back when they get stuck on particular items. So we really do emphasize an open communications channel.
All right, thanks. Colby.
Hello, I am Colby Witherup Wood. Thank you for inviting me to this panel. I work with Christina at Northwestern in the Research Computing Services team. I am a data scientist, but I manage our student consultants. We have two types of students. We have, I should say they are all graduate students and currently all PhD students. We have right now 4 who are doing graduate assistantships. So they are receiving their stipend from the university for working for us about 10 hours a week rather than TAing or working as an RA in a lab. And then we have hourly graduate data consultants. And currently I have 4 on our team right now. The projects they take on, they do data and programming consultations. So researchers at any levels can contact us for help and they answer those questions. They also teach workshops because we also, our group also is in charge of the training for programming and data services at the university. So they teach workshops. And then finally, our graduate assistants also take on projects for faculty members. So for example, we have students building Shiny apps to accompany publications for researchers or helping with visualizations for publications in books. Projects like that our students take on. And I am in a unique position because I actually was a graduate student data science research consultant before taking on this full-time role at Northwestern. So I have that perspective. And so as I'm sure everyone who works with students knows, there's a balance between providing a high level of service to other researchers at the university and also providing mentorship to the students that you're working with.
Thanks, Colby. Alper, one of my other colleagues.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Yeah, my name is Alper Kinaci. I work at Northwestern Research Computing Services as a senior computational specialist. So my primary function is to help researchers in general computing needs, like moving their workflows from their computers to the data center to larger systems like NSF computers and so on. So, so I work with Christina and Colby and Matthew. So Colby already explained some of the functions of the students in the data group. I manage students that are helping us with high performance computing issues. So I manage around, from time to time it changes, but between 3 to 5 students. And these could be like either grad students or undergrads. So I generally hire undergrads to do tier 1 tickets type of support and grad students for service improvements for our cluster. So one thing that I've learned is maybe like to have flexibility in working with students, especially accepting that they will have up and downs in their support. So you really cannot have an exact plan for your next semester, having like 2, 3 students or 5 students. So accept that and then work around that. As I think mentioned, their priority is their classes, their research. So be flexible and then things work better. And I also thank you, Christina, about the shout out for the PERC student program. So I'm chairing the student mentorship program and Betsy here today with us chairing the whole student program. So we are going virtual also. And I would encourage everyone who is attending PERC, even if you're not attending PERC, to have mentorship roles or contribute as a mentor at PERC or PERC student program. So this year we are planning a bit longer engagements compared to previous years, so the time commitment could be higher. But I mean, as professionals, we have all these experience that we can actually shape the students' career, help them with their future. So yeah, I encourage everyone to have a role in the mentorship program. Thanks.
Thanks, Alper. Amy. Second Amy.
Yeah, I'm Amy Work. I'm the GIS Librarian at the University of California, San Diego. I'm also with my colleague, Stephanie Labou, who's on this call. And together, the two of us, along with two other librarians, manage the Data and GIS Lab in the library, which is really a public serving space where any patron can drop in and ask for assistance in data and GIS. We manage 5 students in the lab. Those are both undergrads and graduate students. We typically have them anywhere from a year, and if we're lucky, we can have them catch them early on, and we may have them for 3 years. They traditionally work on projects. Their first responsibility when we're open, which currently we're not, is to serve any patron that's coming in and asking for questions. So they may come in with a specific question, dealing with a specific software or troubleshooting a workflow. So their job is to try and assist them, and it's either assist them in troubleshooting the problem or help them find the resources to help that patron do that on their own. So they may have the knowledge. Their skills range from GIS to different coding languages, Stata. So we have a variety of different skill sets across our patrons. So their first job is serving those patrons, but then their second job is to work on individual projects that either we've identified or that we're working with other faculty and researchers or other librarians, is to work on smaller projects when they're at the desk and not necessarily helping a patron. Since we've gone into this remote work, we actually still have our 5 students working for us, and they're doing remote work. And I'll say the one thing that we've transitioned to from our in-person structure to now this remote structure is we've started to meet with all of our students on a weekly basis for 30 minutes just to get an update across all the projects they're working. And we found that that is actually extremely helpful to gather where they are, and then we're finding that they're sharing some more of their questions and issues rather than we might say, drop in on the student for 5 minutes, ask them how they're doing, and they have a load of questions. And so we're able to set aside the time to work with those students. So I'll leave it there and I'll let Stephanie say anything next. But I will say the one thing, against what everyone else has said previously is, the peer-to-peer, but also giving some of the students some questions that they may not know right off the bat, but giving them this ability to try and help troubleshoot an issue really gives them the power and the confidence to expand more. So it's giving them questions that we know they may not be able to handle, but saying it's okay, just go out and explore and try and assist. And that's actually helped grow their confidence.
Great. Stephanie, do you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I have a few things to add. So hi, I'm Stephanie Labou. I'm at UC San Diego with Amy. I'm the librarian for data science. And so Amy gave a good background of what our students do. I will add one kind of interesting and unintended side effect of staffing a lab. So we usually have about half a dozen undergrads, 3 are kind of geospatial focused, and then 3 are ones that we consider data focused. So they should be able to help with questions about Stata and SAS and R and Python. And one interesting thing that we found is our student population that we want, right, the people with the skills to help, they're also the people who are very high risk for leaving us for other positions on campus. So we had a student go work for IT. He did end up coming back, which was great. But we are always kind of one step away or one job posting away from losing our students because they have this really valuable skill set. And so we've struggled a bit, and we're thinking about how we can best retain these students because we need them to be able to offer a high level of service. However, we tend to lose them for internships or other jobs on campus. And so we've been trying to figure out how can we get students that have this high skill set and then retain them, and what else can we offer them? So some of it is, like Amy said, we give them projects to work on, and then they can have something more for their portfolio. But it's an ongoing challenge that we have, and so I'm really interested to hear, like from the other Amy and from Colby, with kind of grad students and other options, and what else can we use to incentivize our students, because they've realized that they can take their very valuable skills and get paid more or get an internship elsewhere. But we really want to keep them because they have a good skill set.
All right, thank you. Just want to answer a question that was in the chat before we continue with Betsy. It was about the size of the institution, and I think probably with the exception of the University of Virgin Islands, most of these schools are fairly large. Northwestern has about 6,000 undergrads and 12,000 grad students, so we're actually probably on the smaller side of, we have UC San Diego on the call here, Berkeley, those are much larger, Kentucky. So I don't know that we have, I think we have one on the smaller side, but if that was the question. But yeah, so as other folks introduce themselves, talking about, are you serving everyone at the university or a subset might help people too. Okay, Betsy.
Hi, my name is Betsy Hillery. I'm from Purdue University, and I'm the manager for research computing here. So we're a fairly large institution as well. And we roughly employ anywhere between 5 to 15 students at a time, predominantly undergraduate. And we use this really as a workforce development opportunity. So we've been able to hire roughly 2 or 3 students throughout, 2 or 3 at least recently. But if you looked across our organization, most of them were actually Purdue students. So we've been pretty fortunate from that standpoint. One of the biggest things that we do is, I think Amy was the one that mentioned this, but this opportunity to let students fail safely. So when they come to work for us, they'll actually do rack stack. We like to have all of our students start in our data center. So they get actually to feel those computers, they get to rack them, they get to understand why it's important that what they're doing. Because if they look at that piece of equipment and then you force that into, like, when they're doing the science, they can relate, hey, these tickets I'm answering, it's actually because of all those computers we have sitting in that data center. So that's been really, really positive for us. But we let our students do all kinds of projects. They're actually geared up with our engineers, and they get to work on projects from building from the ground up. Onboarding, they'll get to build VMs, and then they'll actually get to build clusters. So our students build clusters right beside our engineers. And giving that opportunity to let them see that has been very, very powerful. And I think also you mentioned, Amy, that during these times, we also have stand-ups as well. And we have our engineers run them. And then we have each engineer checking in with their student every day that they're on the clock. So they'll check in, do quick calls, make sure they're on track, off track. But then they'll attend our big team meeting on Fridays and get to talk about their successes and their failures, which has been super important. I'm really excited, as well as Alper with the perk, because I'm on the student committee, and that's been really rewarding as well. So I'm here and excited to talk with other people to see what they're doing. And with that, I'll pass. Thank you.
Thanks. Joanne. You're still muted.
Yeah, not that I have a lot of background noise here, but anyway, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Joanne Luciano. I am at the University of the Virgin Islands, which is a lot smaller than a lot of your universities. It's 2,000 students about total, and we're small, Caribbean, and we're also an HBCU. So I'm not here speaking for a big data center and how we use. I'm just really speaking from my own personal experience with students and how I've utilized them, which is a little bit different than what you've had. So. I'm also still affiliated with Indiana University, and that's relevant because that's part of what's going on. So my first, I went to Indiana University a few years ago to set up some data science courses, and I had not been working with students in a long time. So I was able to use some graduate students to help me take things down to the level of appropriate assignments for the master's level. Another way I've used students is one of the students was graduating, was a foreign student, and needed an RA so that he could stay in the country while he looked for work after he graduated. He has since become my teaching assistant volunteer for the data science classes I've been teaching here at the University of the Virgin Islands, because I don't have a team of people and a cadre of students. I've also used students to help drive some agendas by having them start student-led clubs like the Data Science Club and an aviation interest group, and enable them and empowered them to kind of help lead initiatives and build. We have the opposite problem. We don't have too many students, you know, and what to do with them, but we're often having to recruit students for things. One of the things that hasn't been mentioned so far is that lots of times when something's going wrong, they won't let you know. They don't know how to sort of communicate that, so they'll just be silent. And so don't assume no news is good news, that everything's going smoothly. It's important to check in, to regularly check in and ask open-ended questions. Let them know that they can fail gracefully, as people mentioned, and really support them. I also think managing your expectations, so that's true for everyone, not just for students. Delegate, give them tasks they can't do, but support them. Always assuming that they can do it with support, and always have backup plans.
All right, thank you. Good advice. Brian.
Hi, Brian Haymore, University of Utah, the Center for High Performance Computing there. My role is one of the senior IT folks here for HPC. Our department is kind of part of a larger campus effort for students, but first to kind of touch on what we do, we currently have around 14 to 18 students at a time, just depending upon field positions or whether they're off for internships, which we have a number off starting with the summer. But five of them are about 5 of them are dedicated to our systems projects, and 2 of them I have dedicated to what we just call node wrangling, which is kind of our way of describing, you know, going out and troubleshooting and resolving the cluster resource hardware problems. Each of the students kind of has a primary role, like the node wrangling point that I mentioned, but we try to encourage the students to kind of express what interests them that they see else going on in our department, just to give them opportunities to kind of expand their involvement, also to kind of watch for opportunities that they can propose a project or something that they can do to kind of enhance things. The larger student effort that we have on campus is called SUDO, Student University Development Opportunity. And this is something that's housed within our central IT, and the campus kind of sees it as a key part of the student experience. And so within that program, there are a few hundred students involved in that program. And that program kind of provides a couple key things for us. One, there's a lot of student leads that program has, which are students themselves. They end up doing kind of the precursor interviews, pre-filterings of the students. That's where you kind of send people who are interested in working. Then those people kind of then maintain this queue of interested workers, and then kind of line them up with departments that kind of match their interests, skill sets. And so when we go to fill a position, we're kind of getting pre-filtered, talent potentially. And that works out pretty well. There's an ability to float between one department and another if a student gets in a place and they realize this isn't it for me, I want to do something else. So this has been working out quite well for us. Some of the other people have mentioned some of the key things which is communication with the students. How you approach their work is kind of important. Again, one of the other little side benefits we kind of like of the SUDO program is that these student leads that are there, they meet with us. They refer to us, the full-time staff, as the mentors. So they meet once a month with us and the student to kind of have this kind of planning meeting where we review last month's plans. How did we do? We set goals for the next month. That mentor kind of helps provide that student lead kind of helps provide that third person perspective. Are we giving well-specified tasks to the student? Are they well-sized? It gives the student another place to kind of go and get a outside opinion, just to kind of make sure everything is going smooth. because we have learned that for us as the mentors, there is a little bit of a learning how to use students well. So it's been a good program so far. That's kind of where I'll leave my comment.
Thanks. And Troy, our last panelist.
Hi, I'm Troy Baer. I'm a senior HPC systems engineer at the Ohio Supercomputer Center. So we are a little bit different than some of the other centers who've spoken previously in that we serve all of the higher ed institutions in Ohio, from Ohio State, where we're located, all the way down to community colleges around the state. So in my team, we have usually 2 students. They're usually undergrads. We try to get them year-round if we can. And similar to what Brian said, their main job is hardware triage and repair, running cables, shipping packages back to vendors, things like that. Occasionally, we'll have a more experienced student who's in computer science or EE that will move into a code development role. My team doesn't do that very much. We do occasionally. Other groups at OSC have a lot more students doing code development or working with users than my team does. One thing we found with working with students, and this harkens back to what Brian and Joanne said, is that we found that you need to keep student projects relatively compact or constrained at first until you know what their capabilities are. If you give them too expansive or too complicated of a project to start with, they're going to get overwhelmed, they're going to get frustrated, you're going to get frustrated, and it's just not going to work out as well. So I think I'll leave it at that, and then we can come back to some other things later.
All right. Thank you, everyone. All right, so we've got some questions now. I'm going to try and distribute them out to just a few members of our panel. Otherwise, I think we'd only get through maybe 2 questions before the call was over. So our first question is about how do you onboard and train your students? And this is for Alper and Betsy.
Alper, do you want to go first or you want me to?
Sure, I'll start, and don't keep long so people have time to answer. So I may start from probably the hiring, just a bit that. So when I look for the resumes and the people, I don't really look at the skills at first, but more of like the enthusiasm and what they would bring, like the energy. Because generally, if you hire from the junior side, actually you can retain the students longer, so that gives some continuity going through the years, and then that will give advantage for students to do peer training. So when new students come, you can actually rely on more senior students or advanced skilled students to train them. On top of that, on the training level, I keep a document, like an onboarding document, although that always evolves. So it's never constant because each student brings something new. So you realize, okay, they could do something other than what we have planned. So that's added to that list. So there's a time for each of these items are activated. So some of them are in the beginning, like the access. What do they need access for? Like the ticketing system, our allocation process, and so on. But then as they go along, they would get some pseudo privileges, for instance, some of the commands at the cluster. So they will be responsible for some of the account tracking and so on. So I actually meet with undergrads weekly as a group. So I encourage them to ask questions. So what they have done last week, and then what questions do they have around the tickets, around the projects they are leading. And in these meetings, I generally coach the senior students to ask more, so that encourages others, like more junior students, to contribute to the conversation. And so the other thing, I generally ask for feedback from students rather than assigning them. For instance, when they first start, I ask, could you give us feedback about our documentation? So instead of just assigning, hey, here's the documentation, please read it and learn it. Rather than that, could you look at this documentation and give us feedback. Like, did you understand it? Is it clear? So that actually is a better approach in my mind. And we also keep some discourse documents for some of the training materials. It's a good approach because people could put comments on the solution. So there may be better options or better answers for this. So that gives students some flexibility to put their own answers there as a response. And then we recently started actually drafting solution charts. And I think it's working very well. So for instance, when they see a problem, like what are the options? So if it relates to this issue, I go this way. And then if it relates to this issue, I go this way. So flow charting actually helps new students to cover a large ground in resolution of problems. In terms of grad students, they generally work on service improvements. So I try to meet them every week just to see where we are, how are we progressing, and the next steps. It helps structuring the project and going on the timeline. And one thing, the onboarding, related to onboarding, we are having for the last years some kind of meet and greet in the group, 1 time or 2 times a year. Like it could be kind of like a bagel breakfast or a sandwich lunch to bring the students and the team together so that they will feel more involved and meet everyone and talk. So that breaks some ice in the beginning. So yeah, I think that's all for now.
So I'll just add to some things so we don't rehash. So to kind of extend my things. So in terms of recruitment, it's interesting that Alper mentions that. So I'm fortunate because a fair amount of my team members teach in the classroom. So we're pretty out there in the, working with undergraduates. And so we try to recruit from classes actually, whether they're, so I teach a Com 217 class, which is not a technical class at all. I also teach an HPC seminar class where we deliberately recruit some of those students, but we'll take students from either. And I agree with Alper. We don't really vet them for the technical skills up front. We vet them for their personalities and how in their work ethic kind of questions. So then I mentioned in my intro that predominantly all our students will start in the data center. So that's where they get their onboarding. And we have a very, very extensive actually onboarding process. So they'll spend a fair amount of time there, and then they'll come and actually work with the engineers in a various in various areas within the organization. So we really feel like that one-on-one contact early on is the most important part of that onboarding. And I think that it was Brian or someone mentioned that when they get their first project, it's very, very much scoped. So we don't do wide range projects with them to get started, but over time we build up as well. So we feel like that's really important as well as their success. So I think various people mentioned, we do a success thermometer throughout the time. So we ask questions like, do you feel you were successful in this project? Why or why not? And they'll have one-on-one sessions with their engineers, but they'll also have them with me and our executive director, because I feel like it's important for them to see where you're at in the organization, where you can grow. In terms of where we expect them to get, and also I think Alper mentioned, one of the big things we try to do is get freshmen, or we'll even get students that are high schoolers and then get them to start onboarding, knowing if they're gonna become Boilermakers, that we can have them for the 4 years, 6 years, whatever. And then we finally take advantage of clubs on campus. So when you're thinking about recruitment, and this is not necessarily in terms of onboarding, but when you're thinking about recruitment, it never really stops. So people on our team will go to clubs at the beginning of the semester, and we'll actually start, putting our name out there and talking to students, because more is better than less. So, and then when we can get that big pool of students, then we can kind of work through what are the kind of needs that we have within the organization. We do have students that over the summer will do a bit of on-call work for us. So they get to feel like what on-call looks like and feels like. So that's also been really interesting. Most of the things that Alper mentioned, we do as well. So I'm not going to rehash any of that. And with that, I'll just stop. And if there's questions after the onboarding, I can add.
Okay, thank you. Our next question, so a lot of these people have mentioned a little bit in their introductions. We'll just, if you don't have anything more to say, that's fine, but we will see what's out there. So I think Stephanie, you mentioned some of this before about churn of students and them getting lured away. So we have a question of, how long do students usually work for you, and how do you manage retention and churn? And so we're going to throw this to Amy and Stephanie at UC San Diego, and Brian.
Yeah, I'll start super briefly and then give Amy a chance. I will say that it is a problem. We don't have a great solution, but what we can offer, I think, are twofold. And so we tend to have students that work for us for at least a year. We have had students where we're on the quarter system, so we'll get them for a quarter, and then something comes up and they have to leave. After a year, though, we can promote them to be a student lead. So because they've had that experience, then they can help us manage the other students. So remind the other students to turn in their timesheets. It is a higher grade, essentially. So it is a promotion of sorts. And then something that I've told students as well is that what we can offer is we can write them glowing letters of recommendation. And so keeping that in mind, so while we are sad to lose them, this is especially true for the students that are coming with on the data science side, is that I do mention upfront that if they can stick around for a year or even longer, I will write them an amazing letter of recommendation, right, assuming that they are excellent students, which they almost always are. And the longer they stick around, the more I am able to help them and connect them to faculty as well. So we're trying kind of to offer them that extra networking. It's new. Amy and I have both been in our position for only about 2 years. So we're still figuring out what we can offer, but I think it's that we can be really good contacts, really good letters of reference, and then we can promote them if they stick around, which is a little bit higher pay, and maybe can help us compete with some of the other places on campus. And I'll let Amy chime in.
Yeah, I think that's, I mean, Stephanie summed it up pretty well. And I think we've ended up working with our library HR department to really sort of see what the pay scales are across campus, so that we're making sure that we're paying the students as well as we can, so that we don't lose them to higher paying jobs because there's similar approaches or similarities that really the students interested in working and learning, but also receiving a pay to help support their schooling. The other thing that we ended up doing, and Stephanie really helped lead this, was getting a co-curricular record set up. And so this job that they're doing is not just seen as a job, but it actually goes on their official transcript afterwards. And so as we've started to work with some of our students that way, they said, oh, wow, this is great. Yes, I'm interested. And so it gives them just a little bit more leverage. It's not just a job that they list on their resume, but it actually goes on their transcript that they can use afterwards. And so I think that's also been something else. But I'm interested to hear more of like what others are doing, because it is a sort of a tricky situation.
So, most of the students we have are undergrads. So as we're doing the hiring process, we do look for students that we're hopeful that we'll have a lot of time potential in, because there is a heavy amount of initial training that I'm sure most of us all go through. What we try to do then or at least what we think that we have that tries to help retain them is flexibility. The idea is that we want them to help set their hours around their schedules. The idea is they're a student first and foremost, and they're my employee second or after that. So that flexibility, starts to add a value proposition into working for us. The idea that we let them kind of express what interests them, what excites them, and try to help find projects that lines up with that, I think, lends well to bringing some job satisfaction back. Similar to some of the other comments made, we encourage the students to participate in things that they can include, later on as resume or other, types of contents, going after, submissions, posters, papers, or otherwise to, conferences or other types of events, to get some, starting points for a lot of these undergraduates to get published in some fashion. One of the things we have noticed is that we think we have some degree of success because we see that come back in the sense that the students who've been with us, sometimes 2 or 3 years. We just had one that went with us for all 4 of his years before he graduated and took a full-time position this summer. Is that they are, involved in their own campus daily activities, the clubs, the whatever else, and we're starting to see their friends and their circles come back and apply to the program and specifically request to work for our department. And then you're starting to see this start to build, and now there's a little group of them, and they're then passing the word around. And that helps us because you have a constant feed of interest coming in. And it's also an indication, I think, that there's some level of satisfaction they're having. Last comment is in regards to the pay, we do try to watch the starting pay and built into the program with those monthly sync ups that we do. Is kind of a grading system, and so long as they're hitting the mark, there's an auto raise that goes every 6 months that tries to help keep them moving. It's not a huge raise, but it's bumps them up and tries to keep it somewhat reasonable. And then we do every year so relook at that starting point to make sure that it's competitive. So that's the end of my comment.
All right, thanks. I had told the panelists some prepared questions, but I want to skip ahead to one of the ones that's on the call document that had a lot of interest, which is about funding. So other than, just finding it in your budget, anybody have creative ways of funding students? So I'll answer on behalf of Colby, who had to drop off because she's teaching a workshop here in like 10 minutes, is that one of the things we did was partner with our graduate school, who does fund the graduate student fellowships, and they have them across the university. We realized they had this program, and we got some positions dedicated to our group. And so we'd always had an issue hiring graduate students because a lot of their advisors don't necessarily want them to spend the time with us, especially extra time on top of their RA or TA responsibilities. So this lets them work with us in place of doing those things. So we do still have issues. We have a student for next year who can't work with us in the fall because she has to TA in her department as a requirement with her program, but it's still been better overall. Anybody else have creative ways you are funding people, or how do you find the money?
I can share something. I was going to talk about this when we were talking about managing students remotely, but my department is within an organization called Research, Teaching, and Learning, and that's a lot of different folks. And so we are doing a work exchange, actually, because a lot of the other students in that broader organization do like computer support and like manage like auditoriums and in-person things, and they need work. So we've set up like a work exchange where anybody in the bigger organization can say they need help with certain things, and then there's like a little bit of a sign up, and so we can get help from other students.
Well, so this is Joanne. So one way, it's obvious, I'm sure, but just, giving credit is one way to do things. And another thing I wanted to mention was, I think I might have mentioned, I've been able to utilize the students and some of the graduate students at Indiana University who take a course called Data Science in Practice. And they have to work on real world projects. So this is more like how I guess, get help on a project rather than directly fund a student. But it's just throwing different creative ideas out. Be creative, just, and here we have to be really resourceful. So if you can give credit, that helps fund.
This is Amy, and one of the ways that we haven't had to do this, thankfully, but we've seen some other researchers or professors interested in going after grants. And so if there would be a way to sort of allocate a portion of that grant for a student worker that would perhaps work under us, but work for the project as well. So we haven't had to do it, but I think that's another way of, might there be other opportunities and funding that would support that.
So Amy, I'll just add real quick, we've actually been pretty successful in getting grants. CC Star's been really good for us, and we've actually funded a fair amount of students that way. Additionally, we have add-on services add-on. So you buy HPC services, and then if you need, hey, I need a website to do this, or I need a this, or I need a that, we're actually funding, taking that funding and having students do that work. So we built a rancher environment, Kubernetes, and we've been going after and selling that, and that's all student work. And we've been back channeling that to the student program then.
This is Tony at the University of Kentucky. I'd like to add to that. We do the same thing. We have different little add-ons where the researchers will request support from our center, either on research projects or web-based projects, and we'll utilize that funding to cover students.
All right. I will open up the next question to the panel to see, since we had a few people talk about it already, if there's anybody who has anything more to add about effectively communicating with and managing the work of your students. I think it was the sort of pro tip from a lot of folks that's really important. Does anybody have details to share on that? Yeah, Joanne.
I do. Sometimes students are facing things that are, especially here, insurmountable, but everywhere, anywhere. I've had students whose parents die, you know, whatever. And one thing that I've learned that has honestly never failed me is if they can't be there, if something's going on enough and they just really mentally can't be there, give them the grace, give them the space, tell them to take care of what they need to take care of. Then when they come back, they're indebted to you and they'll help you with anything. Just so be really, I don't know what the right word is, you know, not the opposite of being hard on them, like being just really realistic and accepting. Like if they're not physically there or not mentally there, they can't be there. And knowing that and allowing them to be where they are, because you're not going to get the work out of them anyway, because their mind is elsewhere. So with what's going on, you know, globally now and what we've had to deal with hurricanes, it's made a huge difference. So just be real. It's part of the managing expectations. Like, don't expect somebody to be there who's dealing with an, you know, crisis and emergency. You can have the backup plans in place, expecting that some number of students, hopefully a small number, will have these things happen. So you have the backup plans in place and cover for them, or have somebody else cover for them.
Thanks.
I just chime in kind of saying that while our current circumstances kind of illustrate a more extreme, I see there's an element of this just in the regular semesters, you know, where a student is very anxious, stressed out for their scholastic load for that semester. Be aware of that, watch for that. Again, approach it in a similar fashion. You know, when you see them bogged down, encourage them to just communicate with you when they need to take some time to stay ahead of their studies, get projects done. So we usually kind of walk through, and you expect, you know, as midterms or as projects are due, as finals approach, you know, you tell them, I expect you're going to go missing. Just let us know. Just communicate it. Yeah. You're a student. I'm here for you. You know, when the semester's over, you know, you get caught back up on your projects then. Again, like she said, that endears them to the, you know, job satisfaction, to the relationship you build with them. I think it makes for a better work environment.
Yeah, it speaks to the university. You know, things happen in life, and it's not their fault. So,
I think like this is probably true for every employee in a sense, but for students too, like showing interest in their career, like when you're meeting with them, just learning about their what they want to do in their career or what they're interested in, and try to find out ways to put that in their workload somehow. Just shows them you're interested in their career growth, and then actually retention increases that way too, with like showing that interest. So I think this is not just for students though, like the same rule applies for everyone, I guess.
All right, I'm going to throw one last question out there since we're running short on time. Wondering how folks train staff to manage students, since it's not necessarily a natural skill set if you've got individual contributors who are now responsible for teams of students. How do you help those folks learn the skills that they need? Or how did you learn them yourself?
Well, I guess I'll start with not all engineers are the same. So we actually let our engineers opt into the program. So not every engineer will train students. And we actually have deliberate meetings with those people that become those mentors. And we set the expectations that, again, that they're very volatile, and we make sure that we help the engineers themselves know what to expect out of students. You know, I kind of look at, and this will maybe come out wrong, but like, it's a mom duty for me. I kind of go around and I say, okay, is this working out for you? Are you getting out of this what you need? And then we talk about it. I talk about this expectation in the engineers one-on-one sessions. So we talk about what have you been doing with your student? Are you getting what you need out of it? Are you getting out of it what you need? But we really walk through a step-by-step process that says, at this point, the student should be here. If they're not, is it because the engineer doesn't know what to do or the student doesn't know what to do? And we really keep an open door policy. There's no magic to it other than, from my standpoint, I keep track of, are the engineers being successful with the students, and are the students being successful with the engineers? Because you can't really teach technical people some of those soft skills. They either have it or don't. So that's why I said not every engineer is the same. So we have some engineers that absolutely would not do well with students, but it's kind of a hit and miss for us. There's no real magic. Sorry, I don't have the, here's how to do it.
I think that's a really good point. And I'd like to add that they're not good. They're not trained communicators. They will drop out. So if the expectations are managed properly and say, you know what, if you don't hear from the student, it's probably not that they got run over by a bus, you know, it's probably that they got overwhelmed or whatever. And at the same time, trying to teach the student to be a better communicator, as someone else was saying.
So one thing we really talked a lot about today was like mental health of students. One thing we do very quickly is we escalate to the dean of students if we don't see a student. So if we have an escalation path, if they're here, they're working well, they've checked in. But if we don't have contact with them in more than a couple of days, we'll escalate to the dean of students very quickly because it's that important.
Yeah.
I just add that the program that we have, the team leads or the student leads kind of play this role that's been described by Betsy and Joanne, that they kind of play that external perspective. So if we're not hearing from our student, they can kind of help make that outreach to them, try to circle back, see if they can't get the student to be responsive again. And they also help with the mentors, you know, help training those mentors, us, to get up and learn how to give a bite-sized project to somebody instead of the go explore OpenStack, tell me how it works, you know, where it's just nebulous, undefined, and the student starts excited and a week later has no idea what to do. And as much as Betsy said, not all of the staff want to learn that, to become a mentor or have the aptitude for it. So it's not forced on everybody to have a student if they don't want it.
All right. Well, I think we are about at time. Thank you to all of our panelists for sharing with us today. I think we have a lot of different perspectives and probably more to talk about in the future as well. So if you have ideas for specific parts of this conversation that you want to carry on any of the tracks, I know all of the coordinators would be more than happy to hear your ideas and to follow on for future month calls. And I hope everyone has a great day and joins the calls again for the tracks as they happen. So again, data facing will be in July. I believe systems and emerging centers have June calls. Yes, am I seeing nodding? But the emails will go out as usual. So, all right. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Christina.
Yep.